The sun that day was too bright for the dusty old windows in the parish hall. Dust swirled through the air, each particle gilded by shafts of light that cut through the worn wooden beams overhead. I remember that and the acrid scent of wax drippings from the altar candles, sweet but threatening to choke my lungs. People filed in from the hot street, their sandals slapping the stone floor. Their voices were low and skeptical, like the rolling of distant thunder before a storm breaks. They'd picked a Sunday afternoon after Mass, when the community squeezed into the hall on Cal Bolivar to hear the announcements and share stories over mate and sour sweet pastries. I was 17, thin and worn but stubborn even then, sheet music folded in the pocket of my patched jacket. My cello rested in its battered, chipped black case beside my chair, the curved wood dull under the fluorescent lights. I had practiced with it that morning, hands trembling, the low notes humming somewhere between my ribs. If I could have crawled inside the case that day, I think I would have, but I stayed because my mother insisted. She said, "It's your turn to speak, Julia. You cannot always hide behind your music." She twisted my hair into a tight braid and smoothed my blouse with calloused hands that still smelled faintly of lemon. Her face was lined, eyes soft if sometimes weary, but what chance did I have against 60 neighbors and the thick, coiled tongue of my Uncle Ramos at the podium? He started in his way, always the booming voice and rolling eyes, scattering nervous laughter like loose coins on the floor. "We have here our Julia the cellist, not the doctor, not the teacher, no, no, she will make her fortune bowing strings in the plazas." The laughter grew and it hurt, a brittle hollow pain that rattled beneath my blouse. He called me forward and there was nothing to do but obey. I straightened my skirt, my feet clammy in thin white socks, and tried not to look at the faces. Tia Aurora's pinched lips, my cousin Marco's smirk, Doña Isabel's exaggerated sigh. The worst was my father, jaw tight as concrete as he stared at the worn tile, unwilling to see or to defend me. I remember my own voice, thin and tight. "I want to apply to the conservatory. I want to perform. I want to play in orchestras," I said, rushing my words, fearing the silence that stood between each statement like a sharp blade. Uncle Ramos leaned on the old registry table, arm akimbo. "How many cellists from San Telmo play at Teatro Colón, Nina? How will you eat? You think you're special. Maybe you'll play tangos on Corrientes and the tourists will toss you pesos, but I hope you learn better soon. Maybe you'll come to your senses and find a real job." A chorus of chuckles, some forced, others pitying or contemptuous. Someone hissed, "Musician, muchacha loca, crazy girl." There was nothing I could say. The shame crawled up my throat, prickled my skin raw. I might have cried, but my mother gripped my hand so tightly my bones creaked. "Go on, Julia," she whispered. "Play them something if they won't listen to words. Show them." And so, in the echoing silence, I opened the cello case, the metal latches protesting. My fingers shook as I set the instrument between my knees, its body broad and solid and warm. My thumb found the rough scar where I'd once dropped it, and the familiarity steadied my breathing. I drew the bow slow, the hairs tense, and played, not tango this time or folk, but batch, because I needed to remind myself that beauty was simple and true. The crowd quieted, lulled by the first movement's winding sorrow, but when I finished, only 3 people clapped: my mother, the old priest, and a boy named Martin from down the street who sometimes fixed bicycles in the back alley. The rest pressed their lips together. Uncle Ramos shrugged hard enough to knock a pastry plate off the table. They dismissed me with a wave, a murmur, a joke about failed dreams. I packed away my cello as they called the next speaker forward, heart pulsing with humiliation and anger, then slipped out before anyone could meet my eyes. Days passed, and with them a steady drizzle of contempt. "It's time to work," my father said. "You've played enough." He handed me a schedule for the bakery, a faded timetable in blue ink. But late at night I stole quiet hours with my music, the bow gliding as softly as breath, the city's sounds muffled behind cracked panes. My mother brought me warm blankets and strong tea. "Let them think what they want," she said. "Dreams are not bread, but sometimes they keep you alive too." I auditioned for the conservatory. On the morning of the test, I wore my mother's lucky scarf and didn't tell my family. The hall was cold and the judges inscrutable as they watched me set up, but I lost myself in the familiar tension of the strings, the liquid rise and fall of the notes. When I finished, the air hummed, and I felt the first fuzzy sprout of hope, a secret bloom I carried alone. When the acceptance letter came, I'd already learned to tune out the sneering jokes. What are you celebrating anyway? My cousin Marco sneered. Another party for a hopeless dream. But I took myself to Cal Corrients, spent my last coins on half a litre of beer in a shabby cafe, and watched the city swirl with possibilities. The next years were a grindstone, bitter and unyielding. The conservatory was a world apart, grand marble halls echoing with Rachmaninoff and nerves, other students parading expensive instruments like jewelry. I had my battered cello, too many patched skirts and shoes worn thin. Sometimes they whispered, the city kids with fathers in government or business, their laughter sharp as thorns. Who is the girl from San Telmo? The one who plays like she's exorcising ghosts. I learned to answer with my playing. Each semester I pushed harder. I studied scores until the notes blurred, missed parties for practice rooms, scraped together work teaching scales to toddlers who mangled the strings. The city pressed close, its diesel tang, its impatient engines, its river wind tangling my hair as I rode the colectivo home at midnight, the cello strapped to my back. My mother kept cutting coupons to save for new strings. My father mostly drank beer on the stoop, his pride settled into hard silence, but he didn't stop me anymore. At 22, near graduation, I attended an open audition for the municipal orchestra. I waited for hours in a back hallway at Teatro Colón, my fingers numb as marble despite the heat. When my turn came, I tried not to think of the audience, the critics, the long-winded lectures of my teachers, or the doubts I'd collected like pebbles in my pocket. I played the Dvorak concerto with all the patience I'd learned in humiliation, all the quiet fury I'd been forced to swallow in that church hall. The conductor, old Gerardo, famous for his temper, said only, "You have discipline. Come for the first rehearsal Monday." From there, life expanded in careful increments. I played in cold rehearsal rooms and grand theatres, sometimes for 10 people, sometimes for 1,000. There were bills, noise complaints, nights spent scavenging the city for cheaper reeds and resin, but there was also music, a sustenance so deep it fed the places inside me that longed to prove themselves. Years passed, each marked by calloused fingertips and the ache in my shoulder that told me I'd worked hard enough. I sent money home. My mother's voice followed, warm and proud. "Your cousin Marcos always asks what city you're in now." "Did you know that?" she chuckled. My father grunted in the background but didn't hang up. One October evening after a concert in Santiago, I received an invitation, unexpected and official, stamped in gold and blue with the city's seal. The Buenos Aires Philharmonic, a special program honoring local talent, a daughter of San Telmo returns, soloist Julia Cabello, my name, my neighborhood, my chance. I stared at the invitation for an hour, then called my mother. Her voice trembled, thick with tears and disbelief. "Do you want me to come?" she asked after a pause suffused with all the lost years, the shouted arguments, the scraped knees and quiet sacrifices. "Yes," I said. "I want everyone there." I returned to San Telmo the day before the concert, the city dense and alive after so long away, the rain-slicked cobbles glistening beneath orange street lamps, yellow leaves skittering in dirty gutters, the tram's brakes shrieking on corner rails. Some things never changed. The bakery's sweet dough still infused the air, mingled with car exhaust and the faint sharpness of river iron. My old home echoed with footsteps and longed-for welcomes. My mother's embrace was firmer, her hair more silver, but her laughter had not changed. My father shook my hand, clumsy but real, and slapped my back. "You did not shame us," he mumbled, eyes averted. For him, that was more pride than I'd ever expected. The afternoon of the concert, I received a message from Martin, the boy who'd clapped for me in the parish hall so long ago. We met at a cafe near Plaza Dorigo. He had a mechanic's oil on his hands, but his smile was easy. He seemed taller, older, with shadows under his eyes, but the kindness hadn't faded. "You'll play for everyone," he said. "The whole barrier's talking about it. Ramos says he taught you everything you know." We both laughed, the old wound now a scar I could touch without pain. The concert was at Teatro Colón, the city's grand cathedral of music. I stood behind the velvet curtain and peered into the auditorium before the house lights dimmed. The gilded balconies shimmered under crystal chandeliers. I searched for faces and found them in a block near the middle, my mother, eyes shining. My father in his best jacket, Tia Aurora with a tremulous smile, and even Uncle Ramos still sturdy, his thick arms folded over a belly that shook every time he laughed. I stepped out to applause, cello in hand, knees threatening to buckle. The conductor announced me the homegrown talent. "Señors y señoras, tonight we are honored to feature as soloist a daughter of San Telmo, Julia Cabello." The words echoed, magnified. I sat and placed the cello between my knees, the way I had so many years before in that church hall, but here it gleamed under stage lights, the battered case replaced by velvet, the bridge burnished and strong. My bow traced the familiar arc. I began to play. I chose Elgar, haunting, defiant, swooping from melancholy to triumph and back again. The orchestra swelled behind me, strings shimmering like sunlight through old windows. I poured my patience, my humiliation, and my stubborn hope into the music, sending the sound up to the highest rafters. As the final note faded, there was a hush, a long, perfect breath, then applause thundered. It crashed from the balconies, rose from the carpeted aisles, shook the old bones of the hall. Some people stood. My mother clapped with hands trembling as she wiped her tears. Even my father's broad palms joined in. There was a camera crew filming the local news. The spotlight angled over my face, dazzling and surreal. When the concert ended, they ushered us through velvet ropes into a reception room, the walls lined with gold-framed paintings and fresh bouquets. My family shuffled in behind a press of neighbors and friends from the old streets. Uncle Ramos met my gaze, his face uncertain, then stepped forward, clearing his throat, his formidable rhetoric replaced by awkward sincerity. "Julia," he said, softer than I'd ever heard, "tonight you made us proud. You proved what you needed to." It was not forgiveness nor apology, but it was enough. Tia Aurora pressed both my hands between hers, tearful. "Nunca jude de ti," she said, though we both knew it wasn't true. Cousin Marcos nodded, shuffling his shoes, and muttered something about, "Next time maybe you play a little tango for us, eh?" But the powerful moment, the proof, came when, after I changed and returned to the stage to grab my music, a small group from the church hall neighborhood came up, led by Doña Isabel, the most caustic of my childhood skeptics. She held out a program with my name embossed in gold. "Will you sign it, Julia? My granddaughter wants to be a violinist now. Maybe you will visit and play for our children." I took the pen, my hands no longer shaking. "Of course," I said. My eyes lingered on the cracked church windows behind her as I signed, some memories fading, others like fresh notes on clean music paper. Afterward, the family gathered at my mother's. The kitchen table groaned with plates of empanadas, sweet bread, and steaming mate. The laughter now was not cruel, not dismissive, but full and genuine. My father raised his glass, something ignited in his eyes. "To our Julia," he said, voice gravelly, "who dreamed strange dreams and made them real." The toast echoed in the small living room. I closed my eyes, the music, the warmth, the scent of lemon and bread all mingling, and let myself belong. Later, after everyone else had drifted to bed or out onto the dark street, I stepped outside with my cello. The night air was cool, carrying the faint perfume of laurel and old stone. Each window glimmered with the light of families reunited. Above, the sky stretched endless and dark, the city humming below. I set up my cello in the empty plaza, the night deep around me. I played for San Telmo, soft and patient, no longer defiant or afraid. The notes wound through the quiet streets. Some memories of shame remained, but they were outshone by the music, by home, by everything I'd reclaimed. And at last, I knew, in my return I was no longer the girl mocked for hope, but the woman who had proven, above all else, that there are no ridiculous dreams, only unfinished songs.